Hey everybody, this is Deb with Truthification Chronicles, and I watched part of this hearing today. I gotta admit, when they got to Tlaib, I stopped. I just couldn't listen to her. So, anyway, but I did tough it out through Ocasio-Cortez, and very interestingly, she ended up actually chairing the session for a while, which was really kind of like the Twilight Zone. So, a little odd there. Anyway, the topic of this is very serious because the Democrats are claiming that Trump's administration has revoked the medical deferred action for critically ill children. That's what they're saying. But, reality is not always what they're saying. And if you look at this is the panel they had. There are 6 of them. And of course, you have 2 young people who have critical illnesses who need to stay in the United States or they will die. And so, of course, that's what they chose. And then they have lawyers, 3 lawyers. And, well, I think this lady is not a lawyer, but I think these 2 work in different legal aspects. And then they have this guy. Well, if you don't know him, his name's Thomas Holman. If you don't know him, he used to be head of ICE. And he really knows what he's talking about. He's worked with the Border Patrol for a long time. And, he supports what they're doing. They call him in for these hearings. And he feels like he's talking to a wall a lot of times. Now, of course, when they do these hearings, the majority brings in who is going to testify, but the minority has usually the option to bring in one person at least. And so Holman is the minority's one person on this. So this is the Oversight Committee here. And, it's just the Dems doing very similar stuff. So I did pick out a couple of the best ones, a few of the best ones that I wanted to put together so that you could hear some of the questions that were asked. And, of course, his response, because these guys were all in agreement because you can't stop them from deporting critically ill children. Well, that's not necessarily the situation, okay? That's what the Democrats say the situation is, but I think it's just fear-mongering, and that's actually something that someone pointed out. So let's listen to the first clip, and I'll come back and I'll catch up with you.
Regarding today's hearing, I would like to start by clearing up what appears to be a common misunderstanding. It is not lawful to have a deferred action program at any federal agency. The word program conjures the idea that an entire class of aliens, if they meet certain criteria, are entitled to a benefit, in this case, deferred action. That is simply not the case. When you break it down to the most basic underpinnings of the law, deferred action is the exercise of prosecutorial discretion, and prosecutor discretion, whether it's a stay or removal, deferred action, administrative closure, may only be exercised, 1, on a case-by-case basis, and not for a class according to a set of criteria, and 2, by law enforcement agencies. Again, prosecutorial discretion is rightfully only exercisable on a case-by-case basis, and even then, only by the relevant prosecuting agency, a law enforcement agency that has a statutory authority over those laws. And I'm here to answer those questions about that program today. It's an important hearing, and these are important questions we'll be talking about today. But I want to change the course here for 1 minute. I understand this hearing is very important. That's why I accepted the offer to come here today and discuss it with members of Congress and the American people. Any policy that affects lives is important. 1 death that could have been prevented is too many. But I must voice a concern what I have about these types of hearings. I have noticed that the House is quick to schedule hearings whenever there's a policy change or an operational change that some think, and usually they're wrong, that this change may negatively impact someone that knowingly violated our laws and may be in the country illegally. I don't see the same sense of urgency when existing policies put our citizens in danger, puts this country's security in danger, or results in an unsecure border, which results in not just a humanitarian crisis, but a national security crisis. While we continue to have hearings which contain inaccurate titles, misleading titles that only serve to push a false narrative about the actions of this administration and vilify the brave men and women that serve within this administration, you are choosing to ignore a bigger problem that affects many, many, many more lives, many more than this recent policy change. If you want to effect meaningful change that will save countless lives, you need to refocus and add to this hearing today. For instance, where are the hearings to discuss the crisis on the border and the 3 loopholes that are causing much of the crisis? Where are the hearings on the existing loopholes around asylum laws that are being abused? The TVPRA that is causing many children to be put in the hands of criminal organizations and put at great danger? Where are the hearings concerning the Flores settlement agreement that has resulted in unprecedented flow of family units that have resulted in countless child trafficking victims, 32% of women being sexually abused and children dying? Criminal cartels are making millions of dollars a year because of congressional inaction. But I see no hearings on this. These same cartels that have murdered Border Patrol agents. Where are all those hearings? This humanitarian crisis has caused a national security crisis because half the Border Patrol is no longer on the front line. Where's that hearing? You want to conjure up a false narrative about sending dying children home, but you won't address sanctuary policies that provide sanctuaries to criminals and put our communities at risk. Many children and others have been raped and murdered by criminal illegal aliens after being released from a sanctuary jail. But I don't see a hearing on that. Thousands of angel moms and angel dads have been born out of sanctuary policies, but I don't see the urgency that we have on things that we want to attack the administration on. I don't see a hearing on that. Our nation's heroes in ICE and Border Patrol are under attack. Their families are being attacked and bullied in public, in churches and at schools. Even companies that work with us are under attack, and their lives are being threatened. Where's the hearings on that? I hear nothing but dead silence on this issue. What I do hear are members of Congress joining in on the hate. Truly unbelievable. I ask that you step back and take a breath. Attack this administration a little bit less and actually address the underlying problems that have caused all these problems. Do your job and fix the loopholes. Make hearings meaningful and actually take some legislative action after the hearing rather than staging more political theater. No member of Congress should be against securing our border. There's no downside of that. There's no downside less illegal immigration. There's no downside on less illegal drugs. There's no downside in taking money out of cartels' hands that have murdered our agents. Today's hearing is important. I want to make that straight. This is a very important hearing. We need a discussion. I'm glad to be here, but we need to talk about these other issues down the road.
Thank you, Mr. Hummon, for your testimony.
So, yeah, I agree with him. Where are those hearings? I mean, there are so many more important hearings that they need to have. Now, okay, I want to state that, I believe these critically ill children need to be cared for, and it's fine that, those are taken in. But we're talking about a handful of kids, and all of them are decided on a case-by-case basis. So why are we spending all this time on 1,000 kids when later on we find out that there are 14,000 children who have been trafficked that ICE has saved? And because they've kept them out of the drug cartel hands and the human traffickers, those kids are now safe. But they don't have any place to put them because, what do they do with them? They can't send them back to their country. Everything is all tied up in the problems with our legislation right now. And if the Democrats really want to solve the problem, they need to address it legislatively. That's what the House and the Senate are supposed to be doing. They do legislation. That's why they're the legislative part of our government. So if they see a problem, instead of just having a hearing after hearing after hearing just to complain about Trump, because that's what these hearings come down to. If it's something bad, they can just paint Trump as this evil person, which is basically what this hearing is about. Now, like I said, I watched, a couple hours, and I just didn't want to hear any more Trump bashing from the Democrats. Now, the Republicans obviously weren't doing that, and the Republicans were extremely respectful to the people there, to the people on that committee. But you're going to see somebody was not very nice to Mr. Homan. Here we go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before I ask my questions, since it has not yet been done, I think it's important to really make sure that the jingoistic, bigoted testimony of Mr. Homan is called out as nearly completely untrue, as being an outrage, and as a former official directing the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency, he should know better.
Mr.
Making
Chairman,
sure that I am...
Mr. Chairman.
No, this is my 5 minutes.
Well,
The word
what
bigoted,
did I say
I'm
was
concerned.
inaccurate?
Excuse me.
okay,
I'm not
it's-
asking a question.
Okay,
or-
the gentlelady is recognized for 5 minutes. She's made her point, and I will try to resolve any other issues at the end of her questioning. Okay.
Thank you. So I just think it's important that it's not accepted as accurate testimony.
So yeah, Debbie Wasserman-Schultz. What a prize. Huh. So that's what she had to say. Now, I just kind of think that there ought to be some kind of rule that keeps them from totally insulting a witness like that. I mean, if she'd have given him a chance, he could have refuted anything that she threw at him, but she didn't do that. It was a hit and run, and that's the way she likes to do things. She wouldn't give him a chance to put in any word on it, and that's the way she likes it, because that puts her in control, and she gets her lies out there that way. So anyway, then this Mrs. Miller came along, and she's a Republican. I don't know where she's from, but she did an excellent job. I just got to share this one with you. Before I do that, though, I think Mark Meadows was before this, and he pointed out that the witnesses had been saying that there was this plan that was no longer available. It was a revocation of this plan. And he said, just what plan is this? And he pointed out that all it was transferring who was putting this plan together. I mean, it was like the government has all these different branches and everything, and it was taking it from one area of the government and giving it to another area of the government. So that's all it is. But the Democrats are saying, oh no, they're getting rid of it. And that's not what's happening. By the way, this chat replay, oh my goodness. Now, I didn't watch it live. I watched it later because, again, I like to speed it up through the Democrats. So, I mean, they were just brutal. These were Democrats, evidently all liberal Democrats here, because they were just horrible about this. They were saying that, the Republicans are just repeating the same message. It's not because of Trump. Don't blame Trump. Well, that's what they're doing. They're blaming Trump for things that happened when Obama was in, but they never blamed him about it. And also Jim Jordan had a really good one, but, I can't play them all. It would be nice, kind of, but I just wanted to focus on certain ones. And, anyway, so let me go on and see, they're just, Mr. Holman is a pig. I mean, that's just ridiculous. I can't believe that people feel that way about him. He really is an honestly good man. He's trying to do the right thing. But anyway, let's go on to Mrs. Miller. She had some really good comments, so here we go.
Thank you, Madam Chairman and Ranking Member Roy, and to all of you all for being here today. Ms. Bueso and Mr. Sanchez, I want to thank you for sharing with us your life stories and experiences that you've had. It has helped shed light on the plight that many are facing and the need for clarity in our immigration system. And I want to reiterate what the gentleman from North Carolina and from Texas are expressing as well. We need clarity, and we need to understand how we can move forward in a positive way. Mr. Homan, I would like to direct my questions to you today. I know that in these past couple of months, we have had multiple hearings in this committee on the topic of immigration. Has all of this rhetoric helped move the ball forward on solving our nation's larger immigration issues?
I missed the last part of that question, ma'am.
I said, has all of this rhetoric helped move our nation into solving the immigration issues?
No.
How would you characterize the Trump administration's response to the southern border crisis?
I think he's doing the right thing. I think he's the right guy at the right time doing the right thing. Numbers are down 56% from the high, only because of his actions, not actions of everybody in this building.
When we had Acting Secretary McAleenan here in July, he discussed how over 5,000 migrants presenting themselves as family units in the fiscal year 2019 turned out to be fraudulent. How does our current immigration law incentivize illegal entry into our country?
because there's loopholes that exist that cause families and children to come to this country. And that's one thing that, of course, I'm constantly attacked at being, I'm the devil. But if anybody in this room has ever wore a green uniform and seen what I've seen in my career, I've seen many dead children and many women that were raped, 32%, the numbers from Doctors Without Borders, and that is the issue. It's not about securing a border, which no one on this panel should argue a secure border is a better United States. But it's not just about enforcing law and securing borders, it's about saving lives. And I feel what's going on here today, and there are many cases that deserve deferred action, significant medical issues. So don't say that this administration don't care about this, because I personally have approved deferred action with medical care. But what I'm saying is there's a flip side of this coin. Many, many more lives are lost every year. Border Patrol saved 4,000 lives last year, people that would have died if they wouldn't have been rescued. People are drowning in the river. Children are dying. Women are being raped.
Repeat that number, please.
4,000 rescues. And what I'm saying is we have hearing after hearing after hearing, but no, I haven't been involved in one hearing talking about fixing the problem that's causing the surge. But you want to talk about family separation. You want to talk about terrible detention conditions. You want to talk about, this deferred action. And I get it. It's all important. But when we're going to talk about fixing the problem and saving lives and securing our nation, like everybody here, I don't care if you're Republican or Democrat, your number one responsibility is secure this nation. And there's no downside in protecting Americans, securing our border. And if you don't like it, legislate. Don't ask people to ignore the law or twist the law or bend the law or find loopholes there or loopholes there. Legislate, do your job, and fix it. It can be fixed, but it's going to take a backbone to get it done.
So once again, given all the political rhetoric in Congress within the last couple of months, there hasn't been a lot of action on fixing this from my colleagues on the other side. Can you elaborate on the importance of a congressional action on immigration?
It's going to save lives. It's going to take the money out of cartels' hands that not only will smuggle people and trafficking children that are coming to this country with relatives that claim our relatives aren't relatives. We have numerous investigations. Children are being trafficked. And I hear a lot of sympathy today, and I share that sympathy. But let's not forget about the other population. Children are trafficked and used by criminal cartels. 32% of women are being raped. Border Patrol agents have died defending our nation. So I don't understand why Congress can't step up and take this seriously and fix the issue. This is fixable. But people are too busy resisting this president, wanting to see the president of the United States fail in the most important issue facing this nation right now, because it's more important about politics and power than doing your job. It should be about love of country, love of securing this nation, protecting Americans, and saving lives of people that are vulnerable trying to come to this country because of the enticements and because we failed to address the loopholes that are causing it.
Thank you, Mr. Homan. I yield back my time.
Thank you. Yeah, so she did a really good job, but mostly she just gave him a chance to talk. And what he had to say there is just so important. It's all about saving lives, because that's not what the Democrats are about. They're just into this power thing, and that's all the reason they're using these immigrants as pawns. It should just infuriate anyone who really cares about human beings that they are using these people. Even in this hearing, honestly, they brought these two kids in that are dealing with such difficult, life-threatening illnesses, and they used them as pawns. That's what they did. It's horrible what they're doing. And then you watch people like this, and you see they really don't understand. They have no clue. And why do they keep talking about, immigration? And well, that's what it's all about, It's all about borders and security and people coming across illegally. This is what the whole thing is about. And trying to get these kids in. You know what? If we had a handle on our actual border and we could control who was coming in and who wasn't, which is what our president is trying to do, we wouldn't have any problems with bringing in these critically ill children to help them out. I mean, it would free up so many resources. But right now, when Holman was talking, he put a lot of emphasis, every time he talked, he put a lot of emphasis on the human trafficking part of it, because this is something that nobody's talking about. These children are being trafficked. They bring them in, they do DNA tests just to make sure that the person who says they're related to them really is. And they're finding out that about 30% of them aren't. So, I don't understand this mentality. If you really care about children, you really care about their parents, then you wouldn't be luring them over here with these fake promises that they'll get asylum, and then they don't get asylum. And they end up being on the run for the rest of their lives. I mean, what a horrible thing to do to people. It's like a bait and switch type thing. But the Democrats are really good at it. Oh, yeah, Elijah Cummings even put in his 2 cents. But, it wasn't worth it. And the last one I have to share with you is this Grothman. Again, I don't know where he's from. I didn't look it up. But he did a really good job, too, because he just gave the truth here. He told you exactly what was really going on. So let me play that one for you.
Chair now recognizes Mr. Grothman for 5 minutes of questioning.
Sure. First of all, Mr. Holman, I'd like to say I respect. I've been at the border 3 times. I respect law enforcement. I deal with a lot of law enforcement, sheriff's department, police department, corrections officers. There's nobody who I have a higher opinion of than Border Patrol and ICE. The compassion these folks have had under the most trying circumstances is something that should ever be commended, and I feel bad that some other members of this institution like to slam you folks to make cheap political points, because if they ever met you and were honest with you, they would have a high opinion of the whole crew down there. Now, I guess we haven't decided yet that ICE is going to be the one making these determinations, but you've dealt with a lot of ICE officials and you've been involved for a long time. As a practical matter, could you ever, under any circumstances, see if they had that discretion, anybody from ICE kicking someone like the 2 people on the other end of the panel out of this country?
Absolutely. I've heard here today there's cases here that deserve the attention of prosecutorial discretion, and ICE does that every day. I personally have approved it when I was ICE director.
Right. This would never happen. In other words, what I'm trying to get at, do you believe these folks are here to create an unnecessary fear that's never going to happen anyway? In other words, they are scaring people who shouldn't be scared because your former organization would never kick somebody like this out of the country anyway.
I understand their testimony, and I applaud them for being here and telling their story. They have a good story to tell, and regardless if it's CIS or an ICE officer, I think they'd make the right decision.
Right. You could not see them kicked out of this country, could you?
No.
Okay. Give you a couple other questions. We right now have an overall crisis at the border, and I think everybody who's down there knows a variety of things that can be done. Our underlying problem is we have way, way, way too many people in this country who are not here legally. Could you give us a general summary of a couple of suggestions you have for Congress that we could do that would reduce the number of people in this country illegally so we wouldn't have to make so many judgment decisions?
There's 3 things that we've been talking about for the last 2 years. One's a Flores settlement agreement. Back in FY 14 and 15, when the family crisis first started, we detained families for 40, 50 days until they saw a judge. It wasn't Flores reinterpreted the decision that we can only hold them for 20 days, which isn't long enough to see a judge. So we would like to be able to detain them long enough to see a judge. We did it under the Obama administration. I don't know why we can't do it now.
We hold President Trump to a significantly higher standard of care than Barack Obama.
But it worked. It worked. Once we did that,
yeah.
Once they saw the judge, a majority lost their cases and were removed. Right. The second thing we do is look at the Trafficking Victims Protection Act, which is causing children to be smuggled by criminal organizations into this country, and treat children from Central America the same you treat children from Mexico. If you can ascertain and prove that they're not a true victim of trafficking, then they shouldn't get a whole different process than children in Mexico get. They can be removed easier and reunited with families. The third thing is the asylum the asylum levels. Most people pass their first interview at the border at about 88 to 90% rate. But once they get in front of an immigration court, the last number I saw, 88% of all Central Americans who claim fear at the border do not get relief from immigration court. So the delta's too high, so we need to close that delta, make it more meaningful, where people aren't released into the United States to not only not appear in court, but to not listen to the orders of the judge. Like I said, 90% lose their case. There's over 100,000 removal orders for family units, but less than 2% have left.
Thank you. Now, something's been said about, in all these hearings, about separating families. We would be appalled if a minor child from the United States went off to Honduras and the Honduras government wouldn't send them back to their parents. Right now, if somebody who is an unaccompanied minor comes to this country, do we send them back to their parents or do we keep them here?
The unaccompanied alien children are given over to ORR. They're in their custody. Most of them are less than 2% have been removed. Most are here. And that's an issue that no one wants to talk about, right? We talked about the 2,500 separations, but at the same time, there are 14,000 children in custody ORR that was smuggled to this country by criminal cartels. That's inhumane.
And nobody cares.
I think the government takes better care of them than a criminal cartel would.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So did you catch that? 14,000 children have been unaccompanied. They've come in with someone who was not a relative. Isn't that incredible? And a lot of them are being used as mules for the drug trafficking, or they're gang members, or they're kids who have been sold by their parents to be trafficked just so the drug people could come up here, and then they take the kid back and they do it all over again. And they keep using the same children. So it's a sad situation. But the Democrats don't seem to care about that, and we don't read anything about this in the mainstream media. This is an atrocity, that there is nothing about it. You didn't even really probably see this hearing covered unless you saw the clip about Debbie Wasserman-Schultz on Fox, which actually is where I saw it, and I thought, I gotta find this one. But yeah, there were sparks from her, but the rest of them, the Democrats, were pretty much like they always are, just pointing at the people and saying, Trump, 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 Trump bad, Orange man bad. That's pretty much all they could say. But Homan put out a lot of good information in this hearing. I think it fell on deaf ears when it comes to, what's going on. And this is really what irritates me, that we're paying these people's salary and they go in and all they're doing is this grandstanding and nothing's getting done. If they truly think there's a problem at the border, why aren't they proposing legislation? So that's my question to them. That's what I've got for you on this one. I want to thank you for stopping by, and I'll see y'all later.